Welcome to the Daily Increase, the show that gives you tips and ideas on how to improve your life with small, manageable changes. I'm your host, Juan Artigas, and I'll be interviewing influencers in health, wealth, relationships, and personal development who will be sharing their habits that have made them successful. You see, change is never easy and can often seem insurmountable. That's why if you can commit to small, meaningful habits, you will begin to improve your life in ways that you didn't think were even possible. So take a listen and then take action. Are you ready? Let's do this. Hi, everyone. Today we're joined by Jonathan Lee. Jonathan is a former hardcore video game player who went by the handle of Vega. Some of you may recognize him by that name. And today he's studying kinesiology and aspiring to be a physical therapist. Hi, John.
Hey, Juan. Thanks for having me on the show.
Awesome. Yeah, and thanks for coming on the show. So, John, can you share with our listeners kind of your journey up until this point, the struggles that you went through, and how you got to where you are today?
So I'd say one of the most defining issues in my life would be the skin condition I went through. A large portion of Americans have eczema, and most people who know about eczema or have eczema, it's very easily treated. We don't have a lot of information on what exactly causes eczema yet. In my condition, it was an allergy to soy. And if people with food allergies are listening, you'll know how difficult that actually might be. You find soy in pretty much anything on the shelf nowadays. I can guarantee you to walk through a department store, good 80-90% of the food in there has soy in it in some form. So that has been a very difficult challenge for me. At one point in my life, over 3/4 of my body was covered in scars and, general eczema inflammation. Fun stuff. But yeah, through that's actually what threw me into video games, because that was my sanctuary, my escape from life, basically. I pretty much poured all of my spare time into it, even to the point of wanting to pursue computer science to become a video game designer. After a long time doing that, I just spent so much time on it. I eventually rose up the ranks, became a guild leader, became a raid leader. So many people knew my name. I was fun at the top, being at the top at first, but then I realized how much time I was sinking into something that was taking away from my health. And given the soy allergy, my health was the single most important thing that I needed to be taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that once you got to the top, it required a lot of effort and work to stay at the top, right?
Oh, yeah. Being a guild leader is practically a second job. I'm sure people who have done the same thing know what I'm talking about.
It's ironic because, because of your health, you got into gaming, and then gaming actually made your situation worse, right?
Correct.
So what was it, what was it like? You've reached the top, you're getting a lot of enjoyment from this, obviously, and you decide one day that this is just not serving me, this isn't working for me. How did you make the transition to basically ultimately really walk away from the industry?
So throughout my illness, which spanned about 4 years or so, my health was just getting worse and worse as I was spending my time gaming. And sure, I was enjoying it. But given how little time I had each day, since I was spending most of it either studying or taking care of my skin, which on some days could take 2 to 3 hours, I had to spend all of my spare time looking into health. The biggest change for me was getting started with cooking. Everything health-wise pretty much nutrition is the biggest thing that impacts your health. It doesn't matter how well you take care of your skin. If you're eating things that cause you to get inflamed skin, no products are going to help with that. I was on corticosteroids for a very long time and just kept getting prescribed stronger and stronger medication to the point where it would thin out my skin.
So what was that like? Thinning out your skin, meaning you would bleed easier, or just it was really uncomfortable? What was that? What did that look like?
It's interesting because the medication, it's like a short-term Band-Aid solution that has long-term negative effects. So short-term, it helps control inflammation, but long-term, it makes the skin thinner and weaker. So it actually made my skin more susceptible to inflammation in the future.
So it's kind of like a negative compounding effect, right?
Right.
And so from that, you decided I've got to really focus my nutrition, and you basically began to cook everything for yourself because that was the only way you could trust the ingredients that you were consuming, correct?
Yeah, and there's so much misinformation in society nowadays with nutrition. Like, for example, people who still say that fat is bad for you or saturated fat is bad for you or cholesterol is bad for you. I'm sure some of you are turning heads right now, but I highly recommend you look into current research. So it might change your life if you're struggling with nutrition.
That's interesting. I think most of us on some level are struggling with nutrition. We know
Right.
obviously that we should all exercise, but just as important and maybe even more importantly is what you eat and your diet. So talk about the transition from being, almost a 24/7 gamer to just making that shift to focusing on your health and making that a priority in your life.
At first, it definitely wasn't easy, but I absolutely had to burn out on video games first. Like, I was playing them so much that I actually got bored of them. And exercising was actually my last ditch effort to try to fix my health. What drew me away from exercise at first, and people with eczema can relate to this, is the sweat actually irritates your skin even more. So I got to a point where I was so anxious about sweating that I would constantly find ways to cool myself down. I would live in a room that was cooled to 62 degrees Fahrenheit with a humidifier on 24/7. Exercise was very difficult for me, but I forced myself through it. It was extremely painful. And the first day, it was just 5 minutes on a treadmill because that was actually all I could do. But you know what? When you get the ball rolling and keep adding on to that, it becomes something big. Within 4 to 6 months, I bought a squat rack. I bought a copy of Mark Ripto's Starting Strength, and I just got started with powerlifting, looking into reading proper form and everything and trying to really understand how to take better care of my body.
Yeah, that's excellent. And that's quite a journey that you've gone through, that transitional process. So at the peak, what would you say, how many hours a day would you say you played video games?
Wow. If you want to know the truth, I would say 8 to 12 hours. It was pretty bad.
So 8 to 12 hours, 7 days a week, right?
Pretty much. And that's the kind of dedication it takes to be a world record setter. It takes away so much from your life.
Yeah, I struggled with video game addiction myself, actually, for 30 years. I was never a world, record setter like yourself, but I do understand how it can just completely suck away all of your time. And it's interesting to me that you said you started off, you could only do 5 minutes on the treadmill. How did you feel when you got on there and you did 5 minutes and that was it? What kept you coming back and going, trying to get better at it?
Oh man, that is still one of the most painful days of my life. I'm 5'6" and I was 247 pounds back then. That I can't adequately describe how difficult it was for me to do that. But I realized that shortly after that, after taking the bleach baths and Epsom salt baths to take care of my skin, I actually felt better. And that small hint of satisfaction, of achievement, of exercise, it just became a new addiction, basically.
That's fantastic. And John, that's exactly what the daily increase is about. It's how we have these habits or these lifestyles that we know aren't serving us. And the only way to get out is to start making small changes. And eventually they become big changes. And eventually you have a new lifestyle, you have a better habit, you have a better quality life. So your example with the 5 minutes on the treadmill is absolutely spot on. You started exercising and you slowly, weaned yourself off of the video game dependency. When did you realize you were completely over gaming?
Let's see. So I started my weight loss journey about 2 years ago, and I didn't get completely over gaming until about 1 month. And to clarify what I mean, I no longer have any temptation to play video games.
Okay, so you can see a trailer for a new game or a new console release, not really care, right?
Yeah, I mean, 6 months ago, I was like, oh my God, Final Fantasy 15, Star Ocean 5, Kingdom Hearts 3, all these good games are coming out. Now I don't even want to play. I don't even want to buy a PS4 anymore.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't even tell you how many hours I spent playing Star Ocean 3 and trying to get all those silly trophies. I think I filled up an entire memory card, and it was easy in the hundreds of hours. I'm sure you can relate.
Yeah, especially with the content after the game.
Exactly. Yeah, it just
200 floor dungeon or something.
Right. That's right. And beat the final boss with only a lead pipe. I mean, there's just all kinds of ridiculous achievements that you have to do. And as much as, I love gaming and there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but like anything else, if it goes too much to one extreme, then you really have to, reevaluate what you're doing and look for more productive ways to spend your time. So I'm very, very glad to hear that you were able to go from literally the top of the gaming world to basically walking away from it.
Yeah, and I definitely want to touch on that point as well, because I don't want to come off like I'm saying that video gaming is bad. It's like you were saying earlier with the daily increase. I like the premise of your show, by the way.
Thank
How
you.
I realized everything is a habit. And you have to be careful because anything you do more than once becomes either a good habit or a bad habit.
Right.
With video gaming, it can be a way for a person to relax, or it can be a way for them to run away from all their problems. And for me, it was in the second category. I was completely letting go of my health, my future. Like I couldn't get myself to study, and I wasn't doing well in school. And I would just try to numb the pain of my illness by playing video games. So that's why I had to stop. One day, I would like to reintegrate video games into my life, but it's like an alcoholic that's trying to have a drink every once in a while. That doesn't work.
Yeah, I can tell you for me personally, what I had to end up doing was I went to GameStop one day and I just sold all my consoles for cash. And I know when you do that, you lose a lot of money. But it wasn't a fact of how much money I was getting back. It was that I had to get rid of them that same day.
And that's really impressive. I tried a cold turkey approach too. Like I reformatted my computer, uninstalled everything, took my PS3 out of my room. But, within 1 month, I reinstalled everything.
Yeah, well, that moment for me, December 29th, 2015, I remember the exact day. That moment for me was 3 years in the making. And it wasn't an overnight thing. And that was actually the inspiration for the daily increase. I look back and I said, wow, there was a bunch of little steps that led me to get to that point. And then when I was finally at that point, I knew there was no turning back. Now, it's
right.
That I wouldn't ever play games again. If I go to a friend's house and they've got a console, I'll pick up the controller, and play a few rounds of Call of Duty or whatever it's going to be. But I just know myself, I can't have them at home because I'll just sit there and play them all day.
Yeah, I'm the same way. If people challenge me to do a video game, I'll occasionally humor them because I still enjoy them. Yeah. I enjoy them socially. I think that's where I draw the line. If I'm playing a game by myself, and my personal opinion is that multiplayer online games don't count.
Right.
I'm sure a lot of people disagree, but I find that there's more value in face-to-face interaction with video games than online interactions. But back on point.
Okay, yeah. So, we both had similar experiences in kind of weaning ourselves off of the video game addiction and the reliance on it for basically escaping our own lives. So if somebody out there is listening and they know they're playing too much, or they know that the gaming is taking up too much of their time, what's a daily habit they can start now that in time can help them either manage or even eliminate their dependency on video games?
I would say the biggest thing is don't make a drastic change. It has to be small steps at a time, especially if something is so deeply ingrained. If you've been playing video games your entire life and you're getting pleasure from that, it has to be small changes. And if something falls into the category of a vice, you have to replace that pleasure with something else. For example, with me, I really enjoyed fighting games. So it's kind of funny. I actually ended up signing up for a mixed martial arts gym, and that's what replaced fighting games for me.
That's excellent. Yeah. So it's literally like the same kind of enjoyment, right? The same idea, but now you're really doing it versus, pushing buttons with your thumbs, right?
Yeah. And I thought it was kind of amusing because when you told me your story, you told me you played a lot of FPS games, and now you're really into photography. It's kind of similar with shooting pictures and shooting guns.
Yeah, that's exactly on point. It's a very, very similar skill set. I try not to tell that to models and people that I work with, but yeah. You're composing.
Might not end well.
There's a reason they call photography what you do in photography shooting, because you are composing a shot. So you are lining up the camera, getting a composition and taking that picture and capturing a frame. So I do think the skills somewhat translate. And you're right. Like in your case with the fighting games, you actually got into real mixed martial arts. So talk about some of the mixed martial arts that you do. And I believe you also do some archery as well, correct?
Yes. Before we talk about that, I'm going to go back to the previous question. Okay. So first is definitely you need to replace it with something that replaces the pleasure you gain from that vice. And the second thing is small incremental changes. So like try to set a time limit for yourself, system that works for you. For me, it was play no more than 2 hours a day. It might be play less than 10 hours a day, but have a clock ticking. I remember specifically this one time I was playing League of Legends. I'm sure everyone knows that game. What I realized was that probably 4 out of 5 games aren't very fun at all. And each game takes roughly 30 minutes to an hour. I actually had a clock ticking down right next to my game when I was playing. I realized how long an hour was because when I would sit down and study with something called the Pomodoro technique, where you do like 15 minutes of work, 10 minutes off break, I realized how long an hour actually was and how much time I was wasting playing that video game.
That's interesting. So you were able to see, comparatively speaking, what you could do in an hour instead of playing a game, what could be accomplished. And I think anyone who's ever played a game knows an hour is like a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
So,
I kept reminding myself that time is the most valuable thing we have. And that really resonates with me because I lost basically 4 years of my life to illness.
yeah.
So people need to see that the clock is ticking every second. We're practically dying every second. So you better make every day worth it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And one of my wake up calls was I had 20/20 vision my entire life, and when I turned 40, my eyesight started to go, and I had to wear glasses. And
Yeah.
I looked back, and I was like, I spent all those years, decades in front of a screen when I had perfect vision, and now I have to wear glasses. And it's not that wearing glasses is such a horrible thing, but it just for me brought it home at how we all are getting older. We all are aging. Our health is, in some way going down, so to speak. So it's like, if you're young and healthy, there's so many other things you could do besides sit on a couch in front of a screen and push buttons.
Absolutely. And if there's one thing I want people to take away from what I'm saying here, it's that our bodies are built to survive. So health is something you have to do preventatively. Do it proactively. You can't react to poor health once it actually happens because our bodies, it's like a dam. The cracks will just keep forming, and then one day that entire dam is going to break.
So it's about making those small incremental changes and giving yourself a timer. What happens, because ultimately when you do try to change habits, you are going to fail, right? You're going to say, I'm going to play for 2 hours and I'm playing for 6. So how did you manage those moments when you went way over the time you said you were going to play?
The most important thing is forgiving yourself. I can't tell you how many times I broke my own limitations, but what I had to remind myself was that I took action and I made those limitations and I made a conscious effort to meet them. So those 3 are all wins right there. Every step matters. You can't think of life as win or lose. You have to think of every step as progress in the right direction.
That's fantastic.
So, yeah, even if I failed 1,000 times, like that single success is what matters.
Right. And it's exactly what you said. It's forgiving yourself, because the reality is anytime you try to change a habit, no matter what it is, how big or how small, you're going to have those setbacks. You're going to relapse. You're going to regress. Yeah. And you can't, the worst thing to do is give up. Right. So,
yeah, absolutely. There's a Thomas Edison quote that I'd like to share.
Of course.
Oh, he said, I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's so appropriate for so many things in life. Talk about what your life looked like when you were playing games. You were playing 8 to 12 hours a day. What did your life look like now?
At first, I told you I was 247 pounds, and that's pretty bad for someone who's 5'6". Right now, I'm 168 pounds. So I've lost a significant amount of weight. I'm still slightly overweight, but that's not going to stay that way for long. I am so much healthier in any way imaginable. I remember when I was unhealthy, I was sleeping probably 8 to 14 hours a day, sometimes even longer. My body was trying to recover from the illness. And while I was awake, I was in pain the entire time. I didn't want to do anything. I had headaches. It was bad. Nowadays, I have practically unlimited energy. I'm sleeping 6 hours a night some days, and from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., I'm just out and about doing something new every hour. Some days I'm going to class in the morning, and as soon as I get back, I cook dinner, and then I go straight to the gym for 3 to 4 hours. Before you guys freak out, I'm not doing powerlifting for 3 to 4 hours or anything shit like that. I'm training at a mixed martial arts gym, so it's a lot of technique work.
Yeah, and that sounds like a lot more fun than just lifting weights for 3 or 4 hours.
Absolutely. It's very cathartic.
And so it's pretty much a complete 180 from the lifestyle you were living. What would you say to someone listening to this saying, well, that's not me, I could never be that person, or I just, I can't see myself doing that?
I said the same thing to myself. And the one thing I repeated to myself that kept me going was that self-defeating thoughts like that, if you quit, you will never succeed. But if you have that one glimmer of hope and you hold on to it and you just keep working at it, you will eventually get to some level of success.
I like that. And for me, and I'm sure for you as well, John, was when I would look at, I'd be playing a game and I get to the final boss or whatever, and I would just keep getting defeated and defeated and defeated.
Yeah.
And I go back and grind and level up and get all the rare items and whatever, and then go back and fight the boss. And, I would say, man, I put so much effort into something like this. I've got so much like unlimited drive that if I did half of this effort in real life, where would I be?
That's something that went through my mind too, because I was sitting there with one of my friends. He was a really famous Street Fighter player. He was teaching me how to play fighting games. And I was just spending almost 4 hours a day practicing the same combo over and over again. And I was thinking, if I spent all of this time learning an actual martial art, I'd probably have multiple black belts by now.
That's a great way. That's a great way to look at it. And you actually are now spending 4 hours working on moves just in real life.
I never made that connection, but that is very true.
Yeah, now you're just doing it for real. It's the same effort. So the good news is, if you are a hardcore, dedicated gamer, you have an incredible work ethic. It just may not be channeled in the right direction, or you may want to think about channeling it in another direction and see what happens in real life.
Right.
And so, talking to you before the podcast and on other occasions, John, I know you've become quite the chef. Can you share with us, some of your culinary skills and things that you've learned along the way?
So the story of my cooking is kind of funny because I started cooking when I was 13. It wasn't so much that when my health got bad. I just started cooking when I was 13 because I love to eat. I'm sure we all love to eat. Food is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Back then, I knew absolutely nothing about healthy eating. So the food I made was delicious, but it wasn't very good for you. So that wasn't very good for my health either. But what I did was I would just mix a bunch of spices and herbs. Because we bought one of those gigantic spice racks from Costco that have like 40 different blends in this really cool spinning canister thing. And I would just keep mixing them, see what it would taste like, and then mix it again and then see what that would taste like. So eventually I got really good at tasting different foods and seeing what would match together and coming up with these really strange combinations that people wouldn't think about, but they're actually pretty good. I eventually made that into creating my own pizzas. So it's nothing amazing in the culinary world, but the first thing I did was I took a garlic bread recipe and I turned it into pizza dough. And I melted a little bit of butter to pre-bake the dough, and I went really crazy with the toppings. Instead of your typical pepperoni and cheese, I would do weird things like reduce a salmon stew and have soy sauce on the pizza. I know some people are raising an eyebrow at that.
I wouldn't think of some of those combinations.
Yeah. Well, knock it till you try it. My sister's boyfriend's brother, he puts soy sauce on his pasta that has cheese on it. And I thought that was the most disgusting thing ever until I tried it. There's a lot of food combinations out there that just sound nasty, but it works. Like, for example, cheesecake. I don't think sweet and cheese work together. It still makes my brain go, what? But it's pretty good. Fast forward a little bit. Eventually, I realized how important healthy cooking was. And I met a friend in the past couple of years. Well, I've known him for a long time, but we didn't really get to know each other until recently. He was really serious about traditional cooking methods. Like, we're talking actually buying textbooks on cooking and knowing traditional techniques, like what the difference between sous vide. Look at that. I'm such an amateur chef. I can't think of another word. But
I have no idea what that stuff is.
Okay. He taught me a lot, because what was interesting was that my cooking tasted really amazing. And his cooking was really good too. But there was a clear difference between flavor between us and presentation. So a lot of my food would be like stews, and it wouldn't look very good, but it would taste amazing. And his food would look amazing, but it didn't taste as good. So we kind of combined our powers and started cooking together every week. and kind of just mix their ideas together. I bought my own cooking textbooks. I learned how to cook the correct ways and just took my cooking to the next level. And so did he.
Fantastic. I love it. And you had mentioned that earlier again in our conversation prior to the podcast about how it's very important to find someone who's in your space or trying to do the same things you're doing, because you sort of encourage each other and you take each other to the next level. So can you talk about the importance of that for a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. Everything that you're interested in, you need one person who's just as passionate as you or more. For example, if you have a workout partner, it makes that workout so much easier. It's important not to become reliant on them. Like, for example, if they get sick, you need to go anyway, because
Right.
you need that level of personal discipline. But assuming that you're passionate about something enough, you're going to want to do it anyway. I know for me, when I started cooking, I dreaded it. It was something I had to do. But when I found somebody that was more passionate than I was about it, and we really connected, it just blew up. Cooking became something that was really fun for me. Like, it's something I do every day now. Whereas before, I would get home and just throw a couple things together just for the nutrition. And I would measure all the food out and make sure I was getting all the right calories and macronutrients. And it was just dreadful. And I still do that nowadays, but now I actually enjoy it.
I love it. I love it. And so what if someone's out there listening and they're saying, well, yeah, I want to get into cooking, or I want to try to, quit gaming or game a little bit less. How can they find basically an accountability partner?
So I imagine a lot of people right now are saying to themselves, I'm an introvert. I have trouble meeting people. I think an important thing to realize is, now I know the Myers-Briggs test has its own flaws, but I thought it was me using that 2 years ago when I took that test. I was an INFP, the I standing for introvert. I took it just a couple days ago. Now I'm an ENFJ. And I think it's kind of interesting that you can make that big of a change within a year. I think the problem with those kinds of personality tests is that people identify so much with their result that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. For me, it definitely became, I want to be more social. So how do I become more social? I'm still an introvert. I mean, I have a severe case of social anxiety that people would not know upon first meeting me. I'm not afraid to admit I'm on medication for it. It's just been a part of my life the entire time. My heart rate would actually go up to 180 or higher when I was in new situations, especially in groups. And I had trouble picking up the phone and answering phone calls. And yeah. So no matter how bad it is right now, you can definitely go out there and start practicing meeting people. That's really the only way to do it. You got to throw yourself out there and be unashamed about your interests. They define who you are. I used to be ashamed about cooking because I was raised to think that women should cook and men shouldn't. So I was discouraged to cook most of my life. And that feeling of shame, when you express shame to someone else, so many things can go through their mind. Like if I came up to you and I was like, yeah, I kind of cook sometimes, but you'd probably think like I don't want to talk about it, so you don't want to pressure me into talking about it more.
Right.
But in reality, it's something I'm passionate about, so I should be excited to share it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that's something that I've learned as well is whatever you're doing, just like you said, whatever you're into, own it. Be that person.
Absolutely.
Put it out to the world. A lot of times we're afraid that people are going to judge us or think bad things about us, or they just flat out won't like us. But the ironic thing is, it doesn't matter what you're into. If you own it and you are confident about it, people look at the confidence that you have, not the actual thing that you're into. So
right.
It sounds ridiculous, but yeah, I mean, you can tell someone that you're into cooking, you're into photography, you're into knitting. It doesn't even matter. But if you own it and they see your passion, they're going to be attracted to that passion that you're giving off.
Yes. And this is the important thing. It can even be video games. You just have to own it and enjoy it and show your passion to the world. You have to be the flame and not the moth.
That's right. And I think people that aren't into the gaming world don't realize that video games, I think for almost 10 years now, have outsold movies. They outsell any major sports network like the NFL, baseball, basketball. I mean, it is probably the number one entertainment industry on earth. And a lot of gamers are just, embarrassed to even admit that. And again, gaming in itself there's nothing wrong with it, but it has to be something that you manage in your life.
Yeah, video games are beautiful. Just think of how much work goes behind it. It combines so many different disciplines. I'd go so far as to say it's the ultimate form of entertainment. You've got art, writing, music, computer science, all these little things coming together to create this one video game.
Yeah, I think it's more involved than making a movie, quite honestly.
Absolutely.
So again, we're not by any means hating on video games, but we're just saying, look at your life, try to find a balance, and be healthy. Right at the end of the day, that's what everybody should strive for: is to live a healthy life, because a healthy life is a happy life.
Yeah. If you aren't taking care of your health, you're not living to your full potential. And that's the truth. If you're not exercising every day, you're not using your brain to its full capacity. And that should scare you. You could do so much more with your life.
That's right, and you're not realizing your entire potential. You're also kind of like in a fog as well, because
Yeah.
if you're not moving your body, if you're not exercising, and keep in mind, exercising can be a 30-minute walk every day. I mean, it can start that way.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't have to be crazy like lifting for an hour every day, which don't do, by the way. 15 minutes a day of walking, that's enough. That's what I mean by exercise. You need some type of physical activity. Don't be sedentary.
Exactly. And so you've gotten into mixed martial arts, you practice cooking. Is there anything that you regret about making these changes?
I don't think I regret anything at all, except for I could be doing it faster. I could be reaching my goals faster. But it goes back to that whole forgiving yourself thing. Every step is a win.
That's beautifully said. So what are your goals? What's your vision for the next, 5 years of your life? What are you working on today? What's exciting you?
So I've got three things I've got my eyes on right now. The first one is that I plan on becoming an NSCA certified personal trainer. The second one is that I'm looking into wilderness first responder certification with the National Outdoor Leadership School. And I'm looking to become a Krav Maga instructor.
That's awesome. And for those of us who don't know listening what Krav Maga is, can you just speak a little bit about what that technique involves and what it means?
So Krav Maga is a military self-defense system used by the Israeli military. What I'm learning is from the Krav Maga Alliance, which is under Krav Maga Worldwide. They teach a civilian version. But basically what we do is, for example, we learn how to escape from chokes. We learn how to defend ourselves if somebody pulls a knife on us, little self-defense things like that. It's very practical. If you're looking to get into I hesitate to say martial art because Krav Maga is more of a self-defense system than a martial art. But if you're looking to get into martial arts in general for self-defense, Krav Maga should be at the very top of your list.
And that's pretty much available all over the country, right?
Yes.
Jonathan, in summing up, you've had an incredible journey, and you're in such a great place. You're doing some amazing things right now. I know you're going to help a lot of people. What's a couple of pieces of advice you can give to someone who really is just trying to break that video game addiction? What's a couple of small daily habits they can start today?
I would say the biggest thing that helped me was nonfiction reading. I know self-development reading has some negative stigma socially, which it shouldn't. I like to think of self-development reading as something everybody should do. So there's two books I would highly recommend, and they were the ones that helped me the most. The first one is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And the second one is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. The first one specifically, if you're struggling with becoming more extroverted, the first 3 habits talk about how to develop yourself to become that flame we were talking about, so you can naturally attract people into your life.
Excellent. And the second one?
It sounds manipulative on the surface, but I'd like to bring up my opinion on that. I personally see all social interaction as some form of manipulation. Manipulation has a negative connotation, but when you're doing something to try to get a response, that is essentially manipulation. So it's not bad in a sense if you're doing it with good intentions. How to Win Friends and Influence People just tells you how to conduct yourself more professionally to become a less abrasive person.
Yeah, and that's something that we could all use and we could all learn from. I've actually read both those books, and I agree completely. They're fantastic resources. Those are the kind of books that you read, and then you go back and read again, and just pick up one day off the shelf and read a chapter out of it, and you always get value from those books.
Absolutely. I've read those books multiple times, and I still have new things to apply each time. That's the important part. Reading isn't enough. You have to constantly review it You have to take action.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Jonathan, I really appreciate you sharing your story with us and being vulnerable and kind of giving people out there that are looking to make a change in the video gaming world hope. You're definitely a fantastic example, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me on the show, Juan.
Thanks for listening to The Daily Increase. If you like today's episode, you can find show notes and links to the guest webpage at thedailyincrease.com. As an added bonus, you can also join our mailing list and receive a free report on 4 daily habits you can start doing today to change your life. Please subscribe on iTunes and leave a quality review. Thanks, and start making changes today. We'll see you next time.